you. And let's call to order the Sustainability Council Committee regular meeting, August 7th, and let's start with the roll call.
Councilmember Eric Friedman.
Here.
Councilmember Kristen Sledden.
Here.
And Councilmember Megan Harmon. Absent.
And then do we have, let's discuss the changes to the agenda. We're going to have a hard stop at 10:30. And so we're going to do a little bit of reordering and we will take, well, are we doing reordering or we're just?
Yeah, we're gonna switch items 5 and 6.
Switch items 5 and 6. Stormwater.
Yeah.
And draft creek buffer ordinance update. And do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? Doesn't look like it. Okay, and so let's start with approval of minutes from previous meeting.
I'll move them.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Awesome.
And here's public comment for any items not on the agenda. Seeing none. Okay. All right, let's go to item 4.
Okay, so agenda item 4 is update on the Santa Barbara Clean Energy Multifamily Electric Vehicle Charging Program and agreement with Clear Result. That's a mouthful, and this is going to be presented by Ms. Reeser, who's here. You take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. I am excited this morning to provide an update on the multifamily EV charging program. I think we gave you a snapshot of it in the past of this thing coming in the future. And its time has come, so I'll provide a brief update about the program, its concept, as well as the agreement with the selected implementation vendor that we will be bringing to the full council on September 9th. Next slide, please. So before sharing details about the program itself and our selected vendor, I wanted just to step back briefly and provide a little bit of context about the type of emissions and the type of buildings this program will attempt to address. As you may recall from our most recent greenhouse gas inventory and climate action plan adopted last July, we know that transportation and specifically passenger vehicles account for the majority of greenhouse gas emissions that the city produces. Next slide, please. We also know that 60% of Santa Barbara residents rent, and the majority of them live in multifamily buildings. Due to a combination of reasons, which I'll won't get into today, but certainly including the age of the buildings in Santa Barbara, outdated or limited electrical infrastructure and service, as well as barriers that building owners face, technical barriers, educational barriers, financial barriers. Most of these buildings lack electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And why that's important, at the end of the day, that means that most of the residents, most of the renters lack convenient access to EV charging where they live. Those are the problems we're trying to address. This program aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from personal light-duty vehicles and increase access to EV charging for renters in the city of Santa Barbara. And it aims to do so by supporting the installation of cost-effective EV charging stations at multifamily properties with free technical assistance provided to the property owners and incentives. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Missing my great pictures. So what is technical assistance? It can mean a few different things. At the highest level, it includes things like education, site assessments, planning, design, cost estimates and bid support, contractor and incentive information, and ultimately the delivery of reports with clear recommendations and schematics and post-report consulting. These would be for those building owners or for those building managers. Next slide, please. In addition to that free technical assistance I just described, this program will importantly provide incentives. These incentives will primarily support the deployment of smart, low power and shared power charging ports and outlets, as these are the types of solutions and technologies that help avoid often unnecessary and expensive electrical service upgrades. You've heard a lot from us previously about those upgrades and working with Edison and the queues that people need to get into that take a very long time. Lastly, I'll just comment regarding incentives that as is the case with all of our programs, we intend to offer enhanced incentives for certain customer types. In this case, it would be targeted at affordable buildings that have affordable housing in them. Next slide, please. So staff have selected Clear Result as the implementation vendor for this program, and that was based on a similar competitive solicitation that was completed by a sister CCA in the Bay Area by the name of Marin Clean Energy. Leveraging similar solicitations performed by other local government agencies is referred to as piggybacking and is often used to avoid duplicating similar efforts and really to use staff time most effectively and efficiently. Because the scope that Marin Clean Energy was doing with Clear Result is substantively similar to the scope that we are seeking, staff reviewed Marin Clean Energy's solicitation process and confirmed that it meets the City of Santa Barbara's procurement standards. Most importantly, Clear Result is a highly qualified national consulting firm that supports several other EV charging programs focused on multifamily buildings and delivered by other cities and other CCAs in the state of California. Last slide, please. This item and report recommends that this committee receive this update and presentation on the multifamily EV charging program and forward recommendation to council to approve the agreement between the City of Santa Barbara and Clear Result that we will be bringing to the full council next month. Thank you.
Fantastic. Any questions?
I just have one question. This focus on rentings, but does a multifamily include condominium complexes that include renters?
I'm gonna safely say TBD because there's so many mixed use buildings, and I think part of the work that we're going to be doing when we launch, or rather when we contract with the consultant, is really how to design the program and target the properties with the greatest need. But traditionally, condominiums, as defined by the state code and by this city's building and safety division, are categorized as multifamily.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And I just, personal reasons, I live in a condo complex that we try to figure this out, but it's almost, it was essentially rentals before it got converted like 30 years ago.
Yep.
And it's almost impossible to figure out how to get charging on them. And there's 46 units there. So just keep me posted on that.
Absolutely. And I should be clear that while what I presented on really focuses on the needs of renters, multifamily buildings obviously have owned units in them as well.
Thank you.
And then I have a follow-up question too about this with the Clear Result Consulting. Is it to make sort of the framework of the program, or are they going to be doing the technical assistance, or who's doing the technical assistance?
They will be, their primary focus will be on providing the technical assistance that really exceeds the capacity and the subject matter expertise of in-house staff.
Okay.
We will have scoped the agreement such that they will provide us some upfront support with final design components, but largely we have designed the program. It's really about them providing the technical assistance. We will provide and run the incentive component that we do for other programs in-house.
And then does it, I mean, it says Marin, so do they, I mean, it's maybe a silly question, do they travel down to each one of these projects?
Oh, no,
do
we're
they
just
have
using the
their
same
own?
contract Marin Clean Energy did.
Just the same contract, okay,
And we can
Okay.
waive the bid process because they did it.
okay, Thank you.
That's the piggyback.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But they're not the one, they're not traveling down here
No, no, no.
and looking at the buildings and coming up with these reports.
Marin is not, the vendor is.
The vendor is, thank you.
Yes.
I was missing that point. Okay, so, do we have any public comment on this item? No, okay, seeing
Well,
none,
I will move the staff recommendation.
and I'll second. Okay, and just say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
This has been one of the hardest, nuts to crack. So,
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
thank you.
definitely.
Thank you. Okay,
Let's call the vote, actually.
Oh, yeah.
oh.
All in favor, we can do, well, I'll do a voice vote, sorry,
Okay.
or a roll call vote. Councilmember Kristen Slennon.
Yes,
Councilmember Eric Friedman.
Yes.
And Councilmember Megan Harmon. is absent. So
thank you.
this is 2-0.
So now we'll take item 6, the draft creek buffer ordinance.
Melissa's going to start and then Miss Markey is joining us shortly. She's at a IPM meeting.
And yeah, also, Alvin Bus will be also joining by the time they start.
Okay.
They're both coming
There were
from other
conflicting-
committees.
Okay, are we okay taking it out of
Yes.
order then?
Yes,
Okay,
fine, it's
okay.
It's okay,
Okay.
no, it's okay. So as you know, we released a draft creek buffer ordinance for, public comment, and so we wanted to give you a status update of where we are and what our plan is moving forward. Next slide. So as you know, creek buffers are natural areas between new development and creek banks. Next slide. So, the benefits of creek buffers are many, but the primary one is that you are trying to get, structures not too close to the creek where they can be subject to, undercutting from erosion and flood risks. In addition, we're really trying to limit, creek bank hardening, so putting concrete and other things in the creek that can actually, speed up the creek and cause downstream erosion and significant flooding. In addition, the creek buffers provide an area for runoff to be slowed and infiltrate into the ground before entering the creek, so that has water quality and flood protection benefits. And in addition, we are required by the state, federal government and, with our city policies to protect sensitive creek and riparian and wetland habitat. Next slide. So we've gotten the question of why does it have to be an ordinance? Like, why do we have to protect creeks with an ordinance? And so our only codified creek buffer is 25 feet from Mission Creek, and it really comes from the 1960s when there was a lot of flood issues in the city. There are no other codified creek buffers in the city. And so the way it works now is that when applications come in that trigger SEQA reviews, so those are discretionary applications. So those are things that either the city is proposing or which requires a body such as council to make an action that is based on their judgment. So those are things like coastal development permits, conditional use permits, and some design review permits. When that happens, that triggers environmental review. And so through that, we are doing case by case determinations of buffers based on technical reports and basically a back and forth between staff. And it's really led to a lot of cost, a lot of time, and a lack of consistency over time. But in addition, as we've seen a lot of legislation, particularly with housing at the state level, that bypasses discretionary reviews. So a lot of those state laws now say, hey, you can't have discretionary actions, you could only have building permits or ministerial actions. We're seeing a lot of cases of things like accessory dwelling units and things we want, like we want all those things for housing, but we are actually seeing some of them built like right on the creek bank, like right there. We've had several cases of concern. And so in those cases, the only thing that applies is anything that's codified and objective. So the coastal land use plan policies, you know, all those like discretionary actions don't, in some cases, apply. And so in 2011, as part of our general plan update, we had a programmatic EIR. And as part of that, it found that there was cumulative significant impacts from all this creekside development and lack of codified buffers. And determined that that was a significant impact. And so as part of that, in order to mitigate that impact to less than significant, the city committed to developing a creek buffer ordinance. And the way that that commitment read was that we should have an ordinance that where the distance needs to be determined, but it should at least be bigger than 25. So since then, the coastal land use plan was updated, and as part of that, we included creek buffer regulations in 2019 in that plan. And when decision makers approved that plan, it was right after the Montecito debris flow, and so there was a lot of concern about creek buffers. And as part of those reviews, we got many comments from the decision makers that these buffers should be brought citywide and also codified. In addition, in 2023, when we approved the housing element, this again reiterated policies in the housing element, reiterated the need for clear objective buffers, codified buffers for resource protection, in particular creek buffers, in order to protect those resources, but also to streamline permitting for housing because it was so unclear what the actual standards were. So we started on our ordinance a few years ago, next slide. And we released the draft in January, and we've been through this, so I'm gonna just go through it really quick. Just a reminder that in the proposed buffer ordinance, we proposed creek buffers similar to those that were in the coastal land use plan. So for major creeks, it was 50 feet from top of bank. For flood control reaches, so those are portions of the creek where we have public flood control projects, it was 35 feet from top of bank. And then anything that met the state definition of a creek, but wasn't in those categories, was considered a minor creek, and that was 15 feet from top of bank. And again, for those creeks, we were mostly concerned about not having development in the actual creek that would redirect drainage to other properties. Next slide. So again, just a reminder, the draft ordinance, it only applies to new or major or substantial redevelopment. Existing legal development can be maintained, repaired, and undergo minor alterations such as like interior remodels. There's a process to reduce the buffer or put development in within the required buffer on constrained lots with a modification. It allows disaster rebuilds, but if you have a location outside of the buffer to rebuild, it does currently require that you put it there if it's feasible and appropriate. And then it allows ADUs and multi-unit projects within buffers if there's no other place on the property. Additionally, it allows fire protection activities such as like fuel modification and home hardening. And next slide. So the public comment period was from January 14th to April 7th. We sent a mailer to all affected property owners. In addition, we sent it to residents. We had a community open house in February 5th. We had presentations to your committee and then the Creeks Advisory Committee. We had 2 online question and answer forums, and all of these were well attended. In addition, I would just like to say we had over 100 stakeholders engaged. So conversations on the phone, many site visits. And I just want to say thank you to all the stakeholders because seeing the sites, talking to people about their concerns was very informative. In addition, we got a number of comment letters where people had really like combed through the ordinance and they were very thoughtful. And so I just really want to thank the community for all that great work. Next slide. So we received during the public comment period, we received 121 comment letters, and since then we've received more, and as we get them, we're posting them online. So you can take a look at them there, and there's a link in your staff report. Of those, 64 were clearly opposed to the ordinance, 18 clearly supported the ordinance, and then 39 requested changes or clarifications or asked questions, but were not clearly for or against. In addition, there was a number of organizations who sent comment letters. So again, encourage you to take a look at those. There were two different petitions that have been created, one from Santa Barbara Creek neighbors against this ordinance in particular. To date, again, these numbers might not be accurate because it keeps getting updated, but they had about 384 signatures. And then a coalition of 15 local environmental organizations created a petition generally for strong creek buffers in Santa Barbara. And that's at about 763 signatures. Next slide. So just getting into some of the major categories of what was the concerns were raised and kind of options that we're looking at potentially evaluating. Not that we would definitely do them, but we're just looking at, we're going to study them. There were a lot of concerns about the ordinance potentially reducing property values or limiting development on lots. There was a lot of confusion about the impacts on ADUs, whether their insurance might be affected, could they get mortgages? And then also concerns about post-disaster rebuild. So it's clear that we need to be to clarify that, disaster rebuilds are allowed, but we are also considering options for the ordinance to look at like-for-like fire rebuilds in place. And then in addition, we're also wanting to clarify that when you rebuild, you are allowed to rebuild at full density and allowed to have state mandated ADUs and allowed to have the same square footage you had, if not more. We're also looking at potentially raising the threshold for substantial redevelopment. We actually have two definitions in the city, one in the coastal zone and one inland, and the one inland is substantially requires more of the building to be redeveloped to become substantial redevelopment. So we can take a look at using that definition instead of the coastal one, so that we're triggering the buffer regulations. There's a higher bar to triggering the buffer regulations. In addition, we're looking at removing some development size limitations within the buffer. Right now, if you have like a single family home, you need a modification to rebuild in the buffer. You are limited to your existing size house. And we are looking at removing those limitations. Next slide. So we got a number of comments. Let me know when you want to take it. About the definition of a and that it's too broad. We did base our definition on the state definition, which we are required by the state to enforce, but that was a comment. In addition, that our maps were inaccurate and that the buffer widths are either too large or too small. We got a lot of comments both ways. The map that we're using was a map that we've been using since the 90s. And we've been updating over time. So we've been using the same definition of creek and the same map since the 90s, but I think we never had it online quite as much as this, and some people thought it was new. And so some of the things we're looking at is really taking potentially using a consultant to update the creek maps, take a close look at the creeks and how much water they're actually flowing, and really taking a close look at the different creek classifications and whether something should be a minor creek or a major creek. Like for instance, we're looking at Toyon Creek is probably more looking like a minor creek than a major creek and things like that. So really taking a close look, getting a third party involved in that. In addition, we're looking at other options for these little minor creeks that meet the state definition, so we can't block flow, but maybe we don't need to have as much regulation around them. And so we're looking at whether we could measure the setback from the center line of the creek instead of the creek bank, just to make it easier, or considering we already have stormwater regulations that are supposed to limit development like right in drainages, but it wasn't written wonderfully, and so it's not very good at preventing blockages and drainages. And so either way, we'd be looking at changing that ordinance section to make it more clear, like you can't block drainages. So that could also be a remedy for those minor
Mhm.
creeks. In addition, we're considering, and we will study alternate buffer distances based on erosion and habitat and parcel configurations. Do you want to add anything here?
I can jump
Yeah.
in. The only thing, so those existing regulations are in Title 14, so we're looking at buffering, keeping those up potentially as an alternative to minor creeks being part of this ordinance. The classification analysis that we set up, we did an internal staff GIS analysis to kind of determine where the threshold between minor and major creeks was. And so I think just like re-looking at that with the consultant, should that be changed? Should a totally different, we came up with major and minor creeks, but maybe there's something else, because that was a comment we heard a lot from residents, is that one size doesn't fit all, our creeks are different, they, 50 feet everywhere is just not fair. So maybe there is, there's a lot of different options, so we're gonna consider them essentially.
Oh, another thing, I don't know, another thing we're considering is having like different zones.
Mhm.
So for instance, like within the 50 feet, there is a zone, okay, it's the next slide, last use versus more use, yeah. Okay, yep, you got it, you got it.
Thank you, we're sorry, so sorry for being late, we had a presentation at the IPM committee this morning, so sorry. But thanks so much for coming. So we had a lot of comments about what's allowed in buffers. The current draft is very restrictive as far as what would be allowed to be done and within buffers. So we're definitely hearing the comments of wanting to have some sort of minimal use of that space, whether it be sheds or patios or landscape features. And so, we're taking those considerations to heart and looking at how we could address those, as Melissa was kind of just stating. We could have, within like 35, with a 50-foot buffer, let's assume as an example, 35 feet from the top of the bank, maybe you'd be allowed certain things like a 300-foot shed, a hard-shaped patio. But from 20 feet from the top of bank on, you might be allowed like trails or different landscaping or things like that. And then from the top of bank to 20 feet, that's really just that riparian habitat area. So we're looking at kind of options like that. We had comments about, existing historic landmarks or historic structures, or even like community benefit uses that are already within these buffers that would become existing non-conforming, and concerns about the threshold for substantial redevelopment being too low, essentially. So like, how would historic structures be allowed to be maintained if they needed to make significant structural repairs, as an example? So those are things we're looking at as well. And yeah, so looking at the threshold for substantial redevelopment itself, and whether that should be changed or if there should be exceptions for certain things. And then additionally, kind of, we've heard some comment, I would say a lot, about existing unpermitted development within buffers and what do we do about that? And so, looking at whether we would have a grace period essentially to allow those things to be permitted, brought up to come. Next slide. So we heard a lot of comments just about the organization and clarity of the ordinance. It's currently organized by process. So like what permit process a person would go through if they were doing work adjacent to a creek. And so we've looked at maybe changing that to look more specifically at like different types of projects would fall into different categories, but basically reorganizing the ordinance. That the modification process as outlined right now is too costly, but also potentially uncertain. The outcome felt uncertain to community comment that we got. So we're looking at potentially trying to make that more objective and have it state, instead of a modification may be granted, if you do XYZ criteria, it will be granted, just to kind of provide more clarity. Yeah. And we had a lot of comments about the need for ordinance and kind of like, why now? Why are we doing this now? A lot of questions about, we have existing floodplain regulations, why do we need this? And so I think that's on us to really better communicate the why behind this. And that, floodplain regulations are not changing, those are federal regulations that this ordinance does not touch those, but that there are other considerations, other hazards like erosion rates that we are trying to address here, as well as resource protection considerations. So yeah, next slide. And the last set of kind of concerns and comments that we received really related to maintenance obligations and flood control within creeks. We had a lot of residents not truly understand that they actually own the creek as private property owners, that those private property boundaries oftentimes include creeks, and what sort of maintenance obligation goes along with that. A desire to see more flood control projects happen, and you know, public restoration or remediation of private erosion issues. And then we had some comments specific to kind of like neighbor issues, somebody building something that was redirecting flow and causing problems downstream or across the creek, and generally support the ordinance as well. So that kind of summarizes the comments. And additionally, in your staff report, as I mentioned, there's a table that also goes through item by item and kind of what we're considering with more detail. So where we're at now, and where we're looking for some input today is, in order to, you know, effectively address the comments that we've received, we would like to hire a consultant to kind of bring all this information together, update the historic reports, update this creek layer like we talked about, and really give this a third party kind of independent review of what we've talked about. Next slide. So we're proposing a consultant contract that would contain a number of different things. It would combine really the policies that define the need for this in order you know, to address the policies in our general plan, and address the potential significant impacts from existing development along creeks. Update some of those reports on erosion rates and other geologic hazards, and really assess what buffer distances should be.
We can't close it.
No. And then update that creek layer like we've been talking about, that is, you know, 35 years old, and definitely we know of the changes that have occurred, and we would just really like to have an accurate layer to represent just like staff, but also the community where these regulations would take effect. I think that'd be very valuable to have. Yeah, so this is what we were looking for input on today, what we would include in the contract. We met with the police advisory committee last month, or today, and we, you know, the ask here is any input on that, what would be included in that consulting contract, also that, you know, we expect this to be a significant ask, likely in the range of $400,000 that would be coming from the Creeks Reserve Fund to cover that consultant effort. We would be, if supported today, we would be putting out an RFP for those proposals in the very near future, in hopes of taking that back to council to award the contract and give an additional status update in the fall sometime, probably October. And then get started on that consultant effort to keep this moving forward.
And just, yeah, to reiterate, once we do have a revised ordinance and a prepared document, we basically be re-releasing a public draft and like doing a whole big outreach push again at that time. Community meetings, public comment, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, that's all good.
Conditions and.
Yeah, sorry, in the staff report, but first, do we have any, do we want to say what the recommendations are for today? There's two recommendations that we received the update, which we've done, and support staff direction to hire the consultant for technical assistance on the Draft Creek buffer ordinance. So do we have any questions?
Thanks. Well, first of all, great job on the staff report and the presentation. It answered most of my questions that I had, so I'll give comments after we do public comment, but I did have one, and it might be for Ms. DeBusk, actually. So I noticed the timeline is to go into like, by 2026. The end of 2026 to get this back to council. My question is, are the staff members from the community development department that would be working on this, and maybe city attorney as well? Are they the same staff members that would be working on the short-term vacation rental ordinance? No, I'm not joking, I'm actually sick.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Are they?
some of them
Okay.
would be.
So this would be my request is that you work with our city administrator. Because on the allocation of staff resources, on the timing, because the short-term vacation rental. That we just heard at council, the time frame is potentially to get that back, to get it all the way through says council and coastal commission. By 2027.
And actually, if I can clarify,
Yeah.
the ones that would be similar, I don't think that those timeframes are gonna overlap because they'll be involved this fall with short-term. But the parts they'll be involved in for this creeks won't happen until after the consultant has done their work. So
Okay,
that part of it would not.
okay, that's what I wanted to say, if we had staff that were working on both and limited resources and it's gonna delay. The short-term vacation rentals into 2027.
Yeah.
I would prefer that become the priority of staffing, so if that is an issue, can you just double check with our city administrator and make sure that it's not conflicting with the short-term
Yeah.
vacation rentals? Because that would be the priority to get that, and if we have to move this a few months for that would be my preference.
From our office, obviously, Mr. Doimus is taking the lead on the short term, and then, Mr. Henschke and I are working on the creeks.
Okay.
But, we're pretty tight
Okay.
units, so we'll make sure that we have the resources.
Okay, perfect, yeah, it sounds like the work will be spread out enough where we're not delaying the short-term vacation rental for this. I just want to make sure that that's the case, and yeah. That's really my only question. I'll get to my comments after on public comment.
Thank you. I have a lot of comments, but no questions. So do we have any public comment on this item?
The question.
Can you identify yourself?
Oh, yeah, my name is Ray Hunter. I'm just a public member. I work for NOAA.
Okay.
I was just curious if there's any like tangent efforts to restore ecosystem function in some of the areas that have been like heavily modified. I know that that's kind of a separate issue from what you guys are dealing with, but yeah, like the areas that have been heavily channelized or heavily modified, if there's any active ordinances or restoration goals for those in the city.
Yeah, I can take that. The Creeks Division does have an active restoration program. We have our invasive plant removal program. We have a creek tree program, which helps private property owners kind of plant native riparian species on their property. We provide funding directly to them for that. We work with the county. There has been talks of along the concrete channel on Mission Creek, which is county owned, trying to do some additional planting there. Unfortunately, that concrete channel, I think we've resigned to, is not going anywhere. But we are looking actively at other sections of concrete channel to remove, like on Las Positas Creek. We have an ongoing project there that hopefully someday we'll be able to find enough capacity to construct, as also targeting other sections.
Great, thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, back to the committee. Councilman Freeman, comments?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So, very supportive of this effort. I think in particular, I think in our area, there's a lot of creeks, your district, my district, Councilmember Sin. We had a lot of feedback on it. So, taking the approach to get more data, look at the creeks is going to be very beneficial. And the early community outreach, I definitely support before it even goes to planning commission and like is outlined in the staff report. The looking at the definition of creeks or the way of looking at our ordinances, so maybe some minor creeks might not even be included. Those are all things that I think will help. The major issues that have come up are being addressed in this as well, with the defensible space, rebuilds, those types of things. So the plan that's outlined here, fully supportive of that and the community outreach component as well. Especially If we can do like community meetings within some of the districts, maybe not just necessarily downtown here, but try to find like Peabody School or something
Mhm.
like that,
That's a
where
good one.
where it's up in those parts that are really impacted. I know I went with some of you on a site visit on Stevens Creek there to a couple of the properties, and it was really eye-opening in some of the concerns they raised, and they all wanted to feel heard, and they just wanted to have input. And the fact that we went out there went a long way towards calming them down. But the fact that we're taking another look at this will be very helpful. So fully supportive of moving this forward today.
Thank you. And I'll add, just also attending the Creeks Committee meetings and public meetings. I really want to thank you for taking the public outcry seriously. And I think to me, it really highlighted the need for the clarity, because the questions that came up were ones that we couldn't expect somebody at the counter to approve or not approve. Like, what is a minor creek? And is the map updated? And is this substantial rebuild? And all of these questions that people had sort of individually throughout these meetings, to me, really said, okay, we really do need to codify this, so it isn't, discretionary each and every time someone comes in. So while there was so much public input, that confirms the need for the clarity and so I really appreciate that. If you hadn't done all that really impressive, important work getting that first draft out there, which even though people had a lot of different feelings about and opinions about, if that wasn't already out there to respond to, we wouldn't be to this place of getting a better ordinance. And I think with the Creeks Commission, they, recommending the map be updated. And I think that is, to me, that's a really big piece, because those minor creeks, it's like the entire hillside basically. And it does need to be clarified, and whether the minor creeks are such an issue. But then something that you said, Ms. Hetrick, when you said that the cumulative and substantial impacts, that's something that I don't think is clear to people yet, that, they're like, my creek never has water in it. Nothing's ever happened here. I don't have a flooding problem or whatever it is, and not understanding individually how that is part of the whole creek system. So I think that's something that was a sort of like a little thing, but it was a sort of a big important thing. So I really saw here reflected all the things that I've heard from, reading the petition, going to the public meetings at Creeks. And I would just add to that there was a lot of concern about how it might impact fire mitigation. I know in the Eucalyptus Hill area there, even though it's been confirmed several times, I think it's important to keep confirming that this ordinance won't prohibit people from keeping their creeks clear of fire hazards, or make it really clear that it wouldn't. Big questions about the phasing, and I think it'll be addressing that, but if it's not just a substantial rebuild, but whether you have to, take out the patio that you already had or something like that. And just really, I think you mentioned too, we did that urban creek walk with the creeks, and I hadn't seen how many structures there were right on, and there's that one poster child for why this needs to be done in the Bonnet Park along the creek there. And so the main structure went through all the permitting, all the careful setbacks. It was, setback from the creek, all the proper ways. And then the ADU that was built, because it's, not codified a different way. The ADU that was built is, much taller, and it's right on the creek bank. And it's like, that was allowed and didn't have to go through that process because it was by right. So I think having that cleared up so that the main structure having to go through all of that, rightfully so, and then the ADUs, I think that's a really important issue, so that we don't keep having that happening. So really clarity, the clarity that's coming. I fully support the consultant, and I'll add that the Creeks Committee also was fully supportive of this, and having it come from the Creeks Reserve Fund, I think is appropriate, and it's a significant amount of work, and I think it's only possible because of the significant work you've already done, which is, I mean, I think you really took a took a public wave of tsunami of comment there that was not fair, I think. I'm just gonna say that. I think that was really a not fair to have put that on you, and I think it's because of all of the careful considered work that you've already done that it's possible. So I support this fully, and I think the timing of it, it's appropriate to take the time to get it right, and so, yeah. We want a motion to,
Yeah, so I, will move staff recommendations A and B.
I'll second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Eric Friedman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kristen Sneddon.
Yes.
And Councilmember Megan Harden.
Okay, that passes or call present, and thank you.
Councilmember Friedman is offered stop at 10:30. We no longer have a quorum. Is that enough time for you, or would you rather push to next month?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
You just snapped in the. All right.
Like your can do and attitude.
Here.
All right, so we're going back to agenda item 5. For Stormwater Parkway retrofit program presented by Mr. Burgess.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Burgess with the Creeks Division, and I'm here to talk about the Stormwater Parkway retrofit program. And we go to the next slide. So the issue is when we talk about urban stormwater runoff, really the biggest effect on water quality in this city is pavement, essentially. So all the runoff associated with pavement contributes the most to water quality degradation. And so that essentially modifies the hydrograph. When it rains, typically in a prehistoric environment, we would, you know, have water soaking into the soil mostly. And then that contributes to groundwater, contributes to base flows in the creeks that allows them to flow in between storms more often. And then it also has less of that peak flow hitting the creeks right away during a storm. However, when it gets paved, you get that water. It's essentially flash flooding, you know, on minor and major scales, really. And that causes increased erosion in the creeks, which creates channel instability, which then erodes banks, affects properties, affects, you know, like we're talking about, houses and structures that are built next to the creek. And it also affects habitat, you know, that wears away around roots, around things, and then also causes down cutting in the creeks, which is so basically it creates this snowball effect. It has a lot of different detrimental effects. So when we modify this, you can go to the next slide, thanks. When you talk about like low impact development, that's modifying this already built environment by capturing and infiltrating that stormwater on site. So we have pavement, it's necessary in a lot of places, but wherever we can capture that as close to where it runs off as possible, that can increase the groundwater recharge and the creek base flows in between storms. So that we have the water quality, because you essentially have a lot of pollutants that directly run off, and they're not, a lot of these pollutants can be naturally processed in the soil by microbes and plant uptake and things like that. And then it reduces that peak of runoff and flooding and erosional forces. So next slide. So for the purposes of this presentation and this project, a parkway is the space between the street and private properties. That's not sidewalk. That's what typically we call a parkway in the city. This is public property for the most part in the right of way, and it will contain landscaping, sometimes concrete, it contains utilities, street trees, signs, and driveways. It's sort of, you know, everything's thrown in there. And in most cases, that is the responsibility for maintenance falls on the property owner. And like I said, it's natural, often landscape, and often it's hardscape. Next slide. So these parkways represent an opportunity to implement these LID approaches in the city. This is city-owned property. We have and it's areas that we could utilize along with the cooperation of property owners. A lot of cities for years have had programs that utilize these parkways for stormwater capture, citywide, countywide programs. The city of Santa Barbara has done pilot projects. The Creek Division has done those, and then Public Works has done many, and a lot of those are associated with kind of their compliance with stormwater management program in order to capture the runoff when there's larger projects. But we haven't had a citywide program. It's been a bit piecemeal, and we haven't had kind of cohesive standardized designs and a driven outreach for that. So next slide. And this isn't just an example, looking at the city, you can see the layout, one is downtown, one is, I think, either the east or the west side, but just how much is impervious surface? How much of, you've got roof on the, in between the blocks, you've got roofs, you've got parking lots. And then in the city right of way, you can see that's a big part of the impervious surface in the city. And in between the street, you can see the little slivers of parkways. And while they may be small, they can actually capture quite a bit of runoff when utilized in the right way. Next slide. These are some examples. They come in all different shapes and what they look like. Like you've got grass in some, oftentimes that's mounded, and so you can see the sidewalk runoff probably just bypasses them, runs down till they get out to the crosswalk. We have some that are really large and wide, like on the top right picture. The left is really wide, on the right side of the street is really narrow. Some are concrete in, bricked in, permitted or unpermitted, a lot of them. And then down in that bottom right picture, you can see on the left side of that picture, looks like it's just a big yard, but that's actually city right of way. It just doesn't look like it. And so, next slide. Okay, so programmatically, or citywide, we've got about 27,000 parcels. And if we assume 50 foot of frontage, it's actually 66 is the median frontage of lots, but 50 foot being conservative and considering driveways and things like that. A 5 foot wide sidewalk, that equals about 250 square feet of sidewalk. And if you push that out to the citywide with 27,000 parcels, just counting the sidewalks, that's 155 acres. And so we often, when we do projects, we look at the impact we're having, how many square feet of runoff we're capturing. So the potential for this, with a program that can be done in our goal relatively cheaply and expanded out, it could have a big impact. And most importantly, right at the source, and that's that LID principle. Next slide. So we, we've been developing this program, and we were, coincidentally, a resident reached out to us and said they were interested in doing something in front of their property. And so we developed plans. This is on East Gutierrez Street, and what we're looking at is the aerial photograph on the sort of the right side of the street. And the house that's on the right side of the street, the top house on the right side of the street. And you can see that round parkway in front of the house. It's a 9 foot wide parkway. Next slide. I think there's more pictures of it. Here are photographs of it. So, from across the street, this is a parkway. It's a great opportunity to capture stormwater, but the way it is right now, it's mounded. A lot of the sidewalk runoff runs down the sidewalk. And then down off the crosswalk or into the neighbor's parkway that's essentially impervious. And so this is a great one to kick it off. These are just different angles of that. Go ahead, next slide. And so this is a sort of a thumbnail sketch of what you could do in a parkway like this. There's a tree in the middle. We have a lot of constraints. There's actually a water meter, there's gas lines, there's sewer, all of the things that you would have to work around. And so, but essentially this is what we're looking to do, capture some of that gutter flow. Because this is such a wide parkway, we have that width to be able to grade the parkway down a bit and get it below the level of the gutter and actually create a passive flow from the gutter into this parkway. Next slide. And so we surveyed it, worked with the property owner, engineering, transportation, and parks, just making sure we're checking all of the things that might be a concern, pedestrian access, the slope, and anything the neighborhood needs. Next slide. This is the more developed plan. It still looks like a sketch, but this is what we went off of. You know, again, this is a, based on the surveys, you can see that's the whole parkway, the curb cuts on the left and the right. So on the street is on the bottom. The sidewalk's on the top. And then, creating cross sections, this is basically to help us build this thing. Next slide. And here's a cross section, showing where the curb cut is. Next slide. And this is where the tree is. Next slide. For this project, the cost, to build it, $6,400. That's excavation, soil removal. And the timeline was August 2025, and actually we built it yesterday.
Nice.
We're still working on it. I just came in late because I was, talking to the concrete cutter contractor. So, the resident will plant it, we'll monitor for functionality and maintain the infrastructure and, go on, next slide. This is yesterday, excavation, next slide. And this is a little bit more cleaned up, next slide. Oh, okay, and I inserted some, but they probably didn't get in here, but I had it before and after. But this is basically, you can see where the curb cut comes in, what that's gonna look like, and we're gonna cut that, and then that'll be planted. Next slide. Oh, it did make it, okay, here's sort of that before and after. And you can see where I've spray painted on the curb, where that curb cut will be on the right-hand side. Next slide. So moving forward, we've done a lot of analysis, just looking at all the different factors that might affect how we design a parkway, the slope, the width of the parkway, how many trees there are, how many utilities. And we have this in a database and creating something that where we can target outreach in places that might be ideal to put these in. We'll work with property owners who are interested. And the idea is to really try to keep costs down so this can have the biggest impact citywide. And as we outreach things like this, it may encourage more people to approach us. Next slide. This is an example of one of the analysis maps that comes out. So this is like the color darker green is low slope, all the way up to red, which is a really high slope. The thickness of the line is how wide the parkway is. There's a lot of other variables. It's just throwing those two in there in a visual so you can really kind of see what it looks like. There's not data up in the Riviera, so those actually do have parkways, but the data wasn't there using certain the street tree data anyway. But this is helpful. Next slide. So we have sort of three different options. The most basic option would be capturing that sidewalk runoff and allowing that to flow into the parkway. We're capturing that sidewalk. The next, well, actually, the most basic one will be in places where we have pavement in the parkway. Where it's maybe a resident, maybe it was built there years ago. Maybe a resident says, I didn't build that. I don't need this. I'd love to have some kind of rain garden or some kind of thing here. We go in and we can remove that for them and grade it to accept the sidewalk runoff. The next one would be to, just grade that to where there isn't pavement, but we grade it to still accept sidewalk runoff. And then the biggest project, like the one we just piloted, would be to accept the street runoff. And that takes a little more engineering and design. And I'm not sure how scalable that is, because that's gonna be limited, but wherever we can do that, we will, if possible. Next slide. Though, just to add to that, there are probably other publicly owned spaces that we can extend this to, not necessarily parkways, but there may be parks, open spaces, or other city-owned areas that we can capture this runoff. And then outreach, typical outreach, put it in the newsletters, social media posts, a city TV segment that we're working on, and outreach events and meetings like this, it's really helpful. Next slide.
We have 1 minute. So,
Perfect.
Do public comment?
yes, so I just want to make sure
Yes.
we're okay. Public comment on this item? Yes.
My name is Noah Boland and I'm with Build the Ocean. Thank you so much for doing this. We're super excited about this. It sounds really cool. I think one question I have is like, is there gonna be a revegetation component of these retrofits? And if so, we encourage the use of native species as much as possible. I think one question I have is, like this discussion of it being public property, but like maintained by the private property owner. And what that maintenance question looks like, and of course, like if the vegetation maintenance is a component, then again, we encourage native species to keep that minimal.
Absolutely, yeah, that's, I agree with you. Native plants are ideal. The revegetation is something that the property owner will do. They are responsible for maintaining it too, and that's in the municipal code that they're responsible to a certain level. There are rules on how high vegetation can be and the clearance and things like that. So we will definitely, encourage native plants. We don't want to overstep too much though by, requiring people to do certain things, but yes, absolutely. A lot of folks who are into this are also into native plants, so. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, let's do questions and comments together.
Don't have any questions, but just want to thank you. Good job on the presentation. You got it on the fly, got it right at 10:30. Fully supportive of the program. I think there's a lot of benefits for sustainability, but also groundwater, recharge, all that stuff. So look forward to seeing how this pilot one works out and then other opportunities in the future going forward with this. So thanks and apologies for the having to leave early. So.
No problem. Thanks, Dustin.
I'll be quick. I love everything about this. It's so fabulous. And the presentation, I love the hand-drawn plans because it shows this doesn't have to be, you know, crazy complicated. It does need to be engineered and thoughtful. And again, on the Urban Creeks walk, there was one really excellent example of a property that had done this down on the west side. And it was, I think it'd be great to have more of those sort of sample like before, after, just like you have here. And I love this map that shows like, it's like how much could just be absorbed in. It's such a visual on that. And then I'll add that I live on this little loop up here with the high red and the yellow. And it's a little track that was steep and it was built in 1962. And a lot of people have like, it's just paved, concreted over, and like sign me up for this. I would love to be, because it's the water, just like we have a storm drain and it doesn't go in. It doesn't go there, and it's a curb and it's all of those things. So would love to be
we could come up with solutions there.
love to be there, but I just love it. And then I did also have the question about if there's guidance when the property owners are replanting on what would be good to put there, or if it's
And I think there might be a flavor where we even offer to do that, but they would have to maintain it.
I like that flavor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's native plants that we can provide.
And we would probably only provide native plants if we
Right.
were providing.
Yeah.
Right, and we've definitely encouraged that. I mean, there are things that
Yeah.
probably would work the best anyway with the least amount of maintenance.
This is fabulous. I love this. So I don't know, do we need a
No, this was just a update,
update?
and
Okay.
we'll come back once we've done a few more and kind of say how it's going. But yeah, I just want to commend the Creeks Division has done.
Yes.
They've always done tremendous work in the community, but have really been focusing on proactive stormwater management as opposed to regulatory stormwater management. And I think that really helps underscore the why we do this, the value of stormwater, why it's important. And so I just want to commend the team for being innovative like this Parkway program to do that.
Yeah, very well done. Very exciting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Quickly, do we have any items for future agendas, or we're well?
We've got a little list. We've
Yeah,
actually.
Okay.
Well scheduled right now.
Noted. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a high
For the
efficiency
next
meeting.
few months. we
Yes,
got
yes,
some
yes.
good
No, I'm.
things.
It's only because it was.
No, I know, you're right, yeah. And